Hi guys, what's up? So, this week has been a bit of a flop when it comes to YouTube because the plan was to create a lot of videos. I haven't created one so far. It's Thursday and I'm going to be busy for the next 3 days after this one, so I can't actually record. And then I have work, and next week for me, we're not going to talk about it. We're going to live in the moment. We're living in this moment, this video. How is everyone doing? I hope you're well. So I was thinking, how am I going to start this kind of series of what can we talk about? How can I start talking about my writer's journey? Where to begin? And why not begin at the beginning? Like most stories do. Not all, but most books usually start at the beginning, don't you? To be honest, so we'll start at the beginning. I also got a new tattoo yesterday and it looks very pretty. It says currently it's under a fake skin layer and doesn't look that great, but it'll look nicer in a few days when I get to peel this horrible thing off. Anyway, back to the story. Well, let's begin with little Joe, who, to be honest, was quite a lonely child, I think. Like, yeah, I had friends who used to live on my street, and I used to play out with them quite a bit. I also have an older sister, but she's 4 years older than me, and you know, being, let's say, 7, she was then 11 and didn't really want to play with dolls and tell stories anymore. So I used to sit in my room for hours telling stories with my dolls to myself. I also used to have a lot, and still do actually, have a lot of Polly Pockets, and I would line them all up behind the sofa and create a world, create stories with them. And I also used to draw kind of comic strips because I couldn't really get words out that I wanted to. So I used to draw kind of like stick figures in comic strips as well. I never really tried harder to draw all that much, but stick figures were fine for me. And I never really told people stories. Like, you hear about these people out there who, oh, I used to tell my younger siblings or my cousins stories all the time. I didn't. I told myself them. I was in a daydreams a hell of a lot. And so much so that my parents used to be like, Joe, stop dawdling. Why are you always falling behind? And honestly, I think it was just because I was daydreaming. I was in another world, potentially have ADHD too, so that could be the case as well. But I was in my own world for most of the time, and it was nicer there, not gonna lie. Growing up was not easy. I have been bullied throughout the course of my life, every single year in school, every day nearly. So I think stories really helped me escape. Not just my own. I used to read a lot as a child. I used to love watching Disney movies. I still do. And like superhero stuff like the old X-Men and Spider-Man cartoons and anything like fantastical. Really, I used to love reading like the Magic Faraway Tree and like Enid Blyton books, even though we don't. Is it Enid Blyton who's not a very nice person? Perhaps, but. And then when I got older, it was things like Harry Potter. Again, let's not mention that one either. But yeah, we went down the more fantasy route when it came to what I enjoyed to read. I did read a few like teen drama novels and teen romance novels and that kind of thing, but I always usually read fantasy. One of my favourite series, actually, of all time is Artemis Fowl, and I could still easily read that to this day. Honest to God, it is timeless, that series, in my opinion. So, yeah, that's where I think it all started. Like, I always used to like making up fairy tales. Like, I used to pretend to be a witch and run around with my friends, and I wanted a 4-year old to grow up to be a flying horse and then a unicorn. And in my mind, it was very possible to do that. So, yeah, and I was very just daydreamy. And sometimes that was not seen as the norm, and you shouldn't daydream all the time, Joe. You should, stop having your head in the clouds, come down to earth, and, stop daydreaming, stop fantasizing. And even now, I'm still doing it. I fantasize way too much now. It's maladaptive daydreaming now, though. And maybe that was what I was doing as a kid, too, because the family life was never easy. Home life was never easy. School was never easy. And so maybe I maladaptively daydreamed as a kid too and just kind of escaped. But it led me to want to tell my own stories and write my own stories. So not all bad, even though it might have been, I could have possibly just have had some therapy. That may have helped. But hey, the wild daydreams also helped. But then, as a teenager, I kind of stopped writing stories. I started writing poetry instead. Mainly, it was angry poetry. It was very aggressive and emotional and wasn't all that good either, to be honest. It was mainly advised to get my thoughts and feelings out instead of harming myself or screaming at people, even though I still screamed at people and still sometimes did harm myself. Poetry really did just help me. And I'm really thankful that I did find it, because I may have hurt myself more, or screamed and shouted more. And so I used to lock myself in my bedroom, put music on, My Chemical Romance or something, full belt, and write really, really angry poetry. And yeah, it really helped. And it still helps now. I still do it when my thoughts are getting a bit too loud and I don't really know how to comprehend feelings and emotions. I tend to write them down, and sometimes that's in the form of poetry. I remember I also used to just write down my daydreams. Like, I would write down, like, it was kind of in, like, imagine like a really, really rough kind of script sort of thing, where it was like, so and so is here doing this with this person and they say this, and it was that kind of thing where I wouldn't have any like description, I wouldn't have any real like plot or anything. It was basically just like, they're doing this is what they're doing, this is where they are, and I would kind of tell stories that way sometimes when I would like, my daydreams are just getting a bit too out of hand, so I'm gonna write them down. And yeah, I don't really do that anymore. I think I learned how to put that into poetry instead, or just write down the idea and then come back to it, because it could potentially be a cool short story or flash fiction or something. But that's where it all started. So I just had like this weird cliche thought, like, oh, they were destined to write. They were made to write. And maybe I was. Who knows? But I don't feel like that. I feel like because I just found it at a young age, like my parents always used to read to us. We had we still do, we had tons and tons of books, and yeah, it was a hobby. You know, I say was because I haven't actually read much for a while now, and it's hard to me really to sit down and want to read. I have got a long journey ahead of me, so maybe I'll like download the audiobook and see how that works with me, because it's just like the idea of like, well, I don't know, get a book. Say getting a book. So like this book, I did start reading it. Is it this one? No, I started reading the Sleeping Beauty one of this, A Tale as Old as Time. But the thought of just sitting down and actually concentrating on the words, and I need glasses on as well. But I don't know, something's just, I can't like get into it anymore. It's really weird. Like, cause I know I love storytelling, but sitting down with a book, I don't know what it is. It's just like I have a lot, and I wish I could just, I think it's because this may be the ADHD, but I think it's because I feel like I should be moving. I feel like I should be doing something else. This is a waste of time. Even though I spend hours scrolling through TikTok when I could really easily be spending hours reading instead, and it'd be better for me. But yeah, it's like, feels like a waste of time. So if I listened to something, but then I'd have to sit there and listen to it. But then I guess if I'm listening to something, I can do something else. A lot like when I'm listening to music, I can just do something else. So I think that's what I feel stuck. You know, when I'm sat here like this, I feel stuck. And that's probably ADHD. Also, reading kind of gives me a bit of a headache. Yeah, I can't really, my eyes, so I don't really have that bad eyesight. My eyes just don't focus properly, so I have glasses to help them, but it means that sometimes it gives me a headache. So yeah, I wish I was one of those people who could just sit and read for days, but no longer that person. I can sit and write instead. Anyway, that went off on a tangent, didn't it? But aren't you proud of me? I got a video out. I've done it. I've freaking done it. I wanted to play The Sims this week, but I've been ill. I've not really had the chance to do it. And again, just my brain is like, nah, don't do it. I don't want to. I think because I've also just needed the rest. I've literally just needed to recuperate and relax. And yeah, I've been quite active on TikTok, but doing makeup and stuff, it's a bit different. You're being productive, you're moving and stuff, and when you're doing like just playing a video game, yeah, it's not, I don't know, it doesn't seem appealing right now. So I'll probably go back when I can actually afford to buy the werewolves pack, which will be next week. So in a couple of weeks' time, I'll probably start a werewolves let's play. But for now, you've got this one. Maybe I'll record a video after this, but I have to figure out where next, to be honest. Maybe, you know, how I went from writing angry poetry to going to university and actually learning how to write poetry. So yeah, thanks for watching, guys, and I'll see you in the next one, whatever that will be. probably that one that I just described. Bye.